So I keep talking about cleaning and sanitizing, and I want to talk more about that right now. Cleaning compounds and sanitizing agents should be safe and appropriate for food processing operations. So what this means is that on the label, it will indicate if it's approved for use with food. So this is really important. If you're using bleach for sanitizing, you want to make sure that on that label bleach, it says approved for use with food, or in the instructions, it gives instructions for how to use to sanitize food contact surfaces. Not all bleach is created equal. Some scented bleaches or other bleach products might have products in them that will leave a residue after you use it on your food product. So they're not appropriate for food contact surface use. So you want to make sure you look at the label of bleach if you use it. And if you're going to put bleach in a secondary container, make sure that it's properly labeled and store things so that they don't become sources of contamination. Like, don't store your bleach solution over, your food, because if it leaks, it's going to get in the food and you may not notice it. I know, especially if it's in a secondary container, sometimes, the seal might not be tight, and you could get some leaks. So just be careful in how you store things so that they're under the food, away from the food, in a separate container, or securely stored so that they're not near the food. Okay, so it's really important to clean and sanitize food contact surfaces, including equipment and utensils, before using it, especially if it's been stored for an extended amount of time. You must clean and sanitize thoroughly. You must clean thoroughly before sanitizing. Sanitizers do not work well on dirty surfaces. It's important to clean and sanitize at least every 4 hours if equipment and utensils are in continuous use. And that's because microorganisms can grow to high enough levels over, about 4 hours. So that's sort of the standard amount of time for how frequently you want to clean and sanitize things in continuous use with food that could be an issue. And then use new paper towels or clean cloths to wipe spills and clean up at the area. I mean, we all have sponges in our sink that we use on our dishes, or at least I know I do. And they can be sources of contamination. They're very porous, they hold moisture. So think about this when you're cleaning for your business. So cleaning, when I keep talking about cleaning, and what I mean is the removal of visible soil and debris from the food contact surface, whereas sanitizing is actually reducing the number of harmful microorganisms to a safe level. So while you're preparing foods, it's important to wash your food preparation utensils and equipment in hot soapy water and rinse with hot water, or you can wash things in the dishwasher. And do this after preparing food items and before you use it for the next food. You also want to wash countertops with hot soapy water and rinse it after preparing each food item and before preparing the next food. There are different ways to sanitize. If the dishwasher reaches 150 degrees Fahrenheit, it's considered adequate for sanitizing in Rhode Island for home food, for manufacturing food on your home farm. Not all household dishwashers can sanitize. So maybe you have a dishwasher that can get to sanitizing temperatures, but if you don't, that's okay. You can also use chlorine bleach. But for food business, you may need to make sure you're using an EPA labeled bleach. And I'll describe how you can mix this up, but you want to get to 100 ppm concentration using potable water, and don't add ammonia or vinegar or chlorine to chlorine. And additionally, household sanitizers are not acceptable. A lot of those products have fragrances and leave residues, so they're not the type of sanitizing that food processors would use. To make up a 100 ppm solution, if you're using a commercial germicidal bleach that contains 8.25% sodium hypochlorite, you would add about a half tablespoon of bleach to a gallon of water. Bleach comes in several concentrations, so just read the label and make sure that the concentration, if it's 8.25, then you can follow what I'm telling you. But if it's not, just make sure that you are able to determine how to make a 100 ppm solution. It might be on the label, and you can use test strips to confirm the concentration. And these test strips can be purchased off of from a restaurant store or Amazon. So it's you can access them. It's also important to know that sanitizing solutions are affected by the temperature of the water. So when you're making up your chlorine sanitizing solution, you want to use room temperature water. Again, like I said, use test strips to confirm the concentration. These sanitizing solutions will lose effectiveness over time, so make it up fresh daily or every day that you're processing, and check the concentration. There are different ways if you make up a bleach solution that you can use it. One way is to immerse the item or piece of equipment, the spoon or whatever the thing is that you're sanitizing, into a solution, but you may not have a bucket or a bin big enough for that. So you can also apply a spray to the piece of equipment or utensil or whatever it is that you're sanitizing. You want to think about contact time, and this is the amount of time that solution is going to be in contact with the surface that you're sanitizing. And this should be 1 to 2 minutes. And this comes from the food code. So once you sanitize, you want to air dry whatever it is that you're sanitizing to prevent recontamination of the sanitized item. And it's not wise to rinse anything after sanitizing, just let it air dry. Finally, you want to make sure everything that you clean and sanitize is stored in a way so that you don't recontaminate it. Ideally, you'll have a clean, dry location, and you'll have shelving that's at least 6 inches off the floor. So, cupboards and pantries work. You want to store things upside down so that dust doesn't fall into it. You want to make sure that everything is stored in a way so that it's covered and protected from being contaminated. And again, this home kitchen is where you're preparing all your home meals. So you need to think about allergens. Allergens are really important to some people who have food allergies. They can be deadly. So know what foods are allergens, know what ingredients are allergens, and make sure that if you're making something that it's labeled properly with the ingredients so that people with allergies can identify if there's an allergen they should be avoiding. You want to make sure you prevent cross contact between food allergens and food contact surfaces. And the way you can do this is to clean with soap and water, and that will remove any food proteins, which are allergens from the surface. Alcohol-based sanitizers are not as effective at removing allergens as good old soap and water. And then also segregate allergenic foods and ingredients from non-allergens, because that's just another reduced risk reduction measure you can take. To clean and sanitize, you need to make sure you have potable water that's sufficient for processing and for cleaning and sanitizing activities. Make sure plumbing isn't a source of contamination. You might need a backflow prevention device. And that's just something that will prevent non-potable water from getting sucked into a potable water stream if there's a drop in pressure or something else happens. Make sure you have a working toilet and sewage disposal system. And make sure that your garbage disposal procedures aren't going to be sources of contamination. Store everything in covered receptacles in the kitchen, remove them at least once a day, and clean and sanitize the receptacles as needed, especially if something spills in them. If you're going to store food in your refrigerator, you want to use thermometers to monitor the temperature in the refrigerator, and record this because it's a good practice. You're now operating as a food business, and this is a good practice for knowing that you're holding the food at the right temperature. If you use whatever instrument you use, whether it be to measure the temperature of your refrigerator, or if you're making an acidified food and you need to measure the pH, you want to make sure that the instruments you use are clean and sanitized. And you also want to make sure they're calibrated so that they're reading accurately.